Hey folks, welcome to another episode of CPOV Autographs. I am still Matt, aka Stormageddon. Last I checked anyway. If for whatever reason I shouldn't be, please let me know. Before I get into the thing, I, as always, want to point you towards www.djstormageddon.com. It's where you can find all the podcasts that I host and produce, as well as the best way to support me, my merch and my Ko-fi, and all the other things I do as well. I have a YouTube channel, a TikTok. I also stream on Twitch sometimes. A whole bunch of different things that I do. If you like this show and you want to see other things that I do, that is the best place to go. Enough about that, though. Let's talk about this guest, Jason Parks. He is the CEO of Row2 Entertainment. He is one of the masterminds behind Rhythm of the Universe Ionia, which is a VR music theory-based adventure game. Is really incredible stuff. Shout out to Stride PR for setting up this interview. Y'all rule. Jason is an awesome human and a really interesting guy. This was one of the most interesting conversations I've had in a really long time because it's in an area that I know little about but want to learn more. I'm a big video game player, but when it comes to VR, I'm a novice. And so it was great chatting with Jason and this incredible project that he's working on, as well as the future of VR through his eyes and more. So without further ado, I've rambled on enough. Here is my incredible interview with the brilliant, handsome, and delightful Jason Parks.
And I'm assuming that this is just straight audio, right? Are we doing video recording?
No, the video is just so it's more for the flow of the conversation so I can see you and see you reacting. But no, the video I don't use. I've toyed with the idea of making more work for myself and releasing a video version, but I don't know who has the time. I do.
I hear you. Yeah. If you have a model that works, right?
Right, exactly. But yeah, the actual episode of Autographs itself will be audio only. So
perfect.
Even though you look very handsome and, I'd be happy to
you.
share you with the audience. Well, Jason, I really appreciate you taking the time. This rambling intro will somehow get edited down into some kind of semblance, sensical intro, I assume, or maybe it won't, who knows. But I'm chatting with the incredible Jason Parks, CEO of Row2 or Rhythm of the Universe Entertainment. You have a game called Rhythm of the Universe Ionia, is that correct?
That is correct.
Excellent. Yes. Got it in one. And so I think before we get too much into you and your background and run with the interview, why don't you just tell folks a little bit about what Ionia is, why this game is special and a little different from your typical VR experience?
Oh, I would love to. And Matt, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to speak with you. Ionia is probably different than any other game because it is, at least story-wise, been building for the past 10 years that has accumulated through over, at this point, 1,000 international and indigenous musicians and artists working together. The concept is that we have this universal language, which is music theory, that my company started a project back, 2011, where we brought 90 musicians from 90 different countries together, had them write a song of peace together. We had citizens of countries that were at war with each other sitting at a table collaborating together, and that went viral. And that was the beginning of this idea that, wow, this universal language really brought us all together. And we realized that something we all share, and most of us were from Berklee College of Music and MIT, that there are all these musical symbols, these theories, these concepts that we all universally understand and know and share, and it helps us bridge communication between each other. So really, it came down to, over the past 10 years, that has slowly turned into this mythology, this music mythology, where we're turning musical instruments, note names, everything that encompasses music and music theory, and turn that into lands, people, ecosystems, game mechanics, a big storyline arc. And this has been seen on stage shows. It's been seen in music videos, documentaries. Notably, in one of our bigger projects before we got into VR was traveling to the Peruvian Amazon, where we filmed the illegal gold mining and deforestation happening there. Wow. We were hired by the Amazon Aid Foundation to really go and not just capture the beauty of the Amazon, but to also capture, as we come out of the jungle after being in for days, just vast miles of land that's not just deforested. It's the soil has mercury pumped into it to there's a process where you pump mercury into sediment to have it combine to little flakes of gold, which creates methylmercury. You burn the mercury away and you're left with nuggets of gold, but that mercury is left in the sediment. And so that land is not growing back. And so we saw the beauty and the devastation at the same time. And we made a music video and a documentary that was seen at the United Nations conferences in Lima, Peru. So COP20 and COP21. So long story short is we took all of those experiences and we started to create this this model in this universe. It's our Harry Potter, it's our Avatar, right? And we then tried virtual reality, and it was just clear that this is the new entertainment vehicle we wanted to tell our story in. So a bunch of crazy artists found the resources and the talent to start to create VR games, and we went ahead and made the first game, Rhythm of the Universe Ionia.
That's incredible. I mean, so the history of this podcast is it was born out of a music show that's now on hiatus called Crash Chords. And it shifted to a new network, which is why it's Certain POV now instead. But this show's origins is in interviewing musicians. And like, I'm also very much a gamer, and playing video games is a huge part of my life. And so this interview feels kind of like a culmination of like the last decade of the kinds of coverage I would do on this show. And I've done other rhythm games, and we interviewed the team working on Audio Clash. And like, this seemed like such an important interview for me to do because it seems like such an interesting concept. Like, VR is something that's still relatively new, especially in the versions that we're seeing it. And rhythm games have been around for a while. Guitar Hero famously starting that whole trend. And like the physicality of that kind of rhythm game interaction, like it just seems like it was destined to be part of VR. And of course there are games like Beat Saber and Audica and a bunch of other stuff. What makes Ionia particularly special? Is it just a rhythm game, or is there more to it?
Funny enough, there's very little traditional rhythm game element to it. In fact, what the puzzles are in the game are music theory based. And
cool.
and I'll start off by just saying it's more of an explorative adventure game, right? This is a game for all ages. We've had kids as young as 12 and parents that allowed younger children to try, to someone who was 101 years old, Agatha. Before COVID, we had gone to nursing homes, and it was part of us wanting to share and show that our game was for everyone and anyone.
Right.
And we had Agatha play through, and her staff said she hadn't stood up for that long in weeks. And
wow.
What it is more is this beautiful place where every leaf, every interactive object is based on some musical symbol that it has some relevance to our story and our narrative. And the gameplay is, for example, in the demo that a lot of people saw, and what you would see within the first 30 minutes of the game, is a big, giant marimba-like ancient structure. And it's sitting on this elevator that doesn't seem to be moving, and you actually have to solve intervals to actually trigger the device and have it start moving. And for musicians, they'll understand that they actually hear the scales and the intervals that they need to play from the environment. The big giant Brachiosaurus, it's a big dinosaur-like creature that looks sort of like a saxophone. Hence, and for those listening, I have some saxophones on a wall, so I pointed to them. And so all of our, everything is inspired by music theory, and the gameplay is inspired by music theory as well. So that's really what this experience is it's something that is supposed to use music theory to bring empathy to you for an hour and a half of gameplay, which we will be adding additional gameplay in the coming months as well.
That's amazing. I love this idea that, like, my favorite thing about music and also most other art forms is when genres get mashed up, because like genres are human made and mostly meaningless, right? Like they are a way we can grok and describe these things that we're hearing and or seeing or experiencing. And what I love is that while this idea probably has its roots in the same things that rhythm games do because it's music theory, it's just using that as a stepping stone. It's more an action adventure game, and I think that's a brilliant way to mash up those two genres, using just the basics of this music theory to make you interact rhythmically with these different things and kind of solve puzzles, interact with this world. I watched the trailer for it and I got these vibes from modern sci-fi, like Avatar and these kinds of things where like you're in an alien world almost, but the beauty is awe-inspiring because you're surrounded by nature. It makes me think of also things like Neverending Story and like these like fantasy stories. How did you come up with this world? Obviously you must be into this kind of fiction and there must be some roots in that kind of place.
Oh, absolutely. Our creative team, and I'll give a shout out to Amir Serman, our creative director and co-founder of Road to Entertainment. It's about combining, as we mentioned earlier, this unique narrative of a bunch of international musicians getting together and barely being able to speak to each other, but transcending language through performance and through playing music, ultimately allowing their either broken English or broken Spanish or whatever language they are able to barely communicate with, or translators. It makes it so much easier to use and to communicate with them. So that as a basis, right? We then started to explore what our team's favorite entertainment genres are, right? And obviously, as you can see and mentioned, Avatar, ultimately the Uncharted series was one of Amir's big favorites in terms of this sort of explorative environment. And then another point is that our games and our content before we started making games had always been nonviolent. So we wanted to work around that and make sure that we didn't just I guess you could call it sell out by creating some type of advanced shooting locomotion, even if you hide it by it being a slingshot with something non-fatal or something like that. We made it so that the entire world, just like in most people's lives all of the time, has nothing to do with hurting something or violence, but actually helping and building empathy for the world around you. So a lot of games and non-violent entertainment inspired that as well. I think another really big part of what really made this game what it is that we wanted to do something that was in the middle of gaming and a cinematic experience, where if some people who play VR and listening to this might remember or have tried recently the Google Spotlight series. It's a series of little VR experiences that you don't have any interaction. You're just watching this story take place around you, and they're beautiful and they're engaging. And I loved them, but they did feel like something was missing, right? That interactivity, that absence of something that's so important to virtual reality, which is the ability to reach out and touch something. Then I must say that the Blue, right? If also for VR users, where a giant whale goes by and you then have a little bit of interactivity around you, but it's more of an experience. And I felt like that was also a big step. That was the first VR experience I ever tried, and it took my breath away. So what we wanted to do is sort of take this new narrative that's driving this new genre called story living and blend that with simple game mechanics that anyone can play, but musicians would really appreciate, and they can actually teach you something that you can take into the real world, and blend that with what I was just explaining about the story living genre that is starting to crop up in the VR space. And that's really where the heart of Road 2 came from, right? Is the inspiration of Avatar and some of these epic sagas, but really, truly the interactivity and the beauty that can come from virtual reality experiences, something that I feel like hasn't even really been explored very much yet. And that in the next 10, 20, 30 years, we're going to see incredible experiences that blur the line between traditional entertainment and what games are.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'm glad you brought up non-combat in games. Like, I like shooting and fighting and punching in games like anybody else, but I found that the more interesting experiences in games have been around what you're doing besides fighting. Like you mentioned Uncharted earlier, I'm actually playing The Lost Legacy for the first time, which was the most recent game. I love the Uncharted series. I've said this and this may get me ostracized in the gaming community, I like The Last of Us. I love Uncharted. Like, I love what The Last of Us has done for like cinematic feeling games, but I love the Uncharted series. I like snarky heroes. Like, I like adventure. I like exploration. And like, what I love about the Uncharted series is the climbing the walls, solving puzzles. The shooting's fine, but that's not what I go to any of those games for. And like I've found more and more as I explore gaming, I'm looking more at the story, I'm looking more at the characters, I'm looking more at the music and less at the combat. I like game mechanics, but I think combat itself is not the only thing I want in games. There are plenty, I also love Doom 2016. So like I can go both ways, but I feel like I'm more interested right now in the different experiences that find other ways to engage me besides just killing an enemy and getting experience. Obviously, there is music influence in this game. There's gaming influence in this game. Mm-hmm. Do you have any games that you really looked at and went, this is a brilliant experience, I want to try and find a way to incorporate this, or this has inspired me to want to do stuff? You mentioned Uncharted earlier. Like, are there any other games that you really look at now that you're in awe of and love what they're doing in the space?
Yes. One, and a game that I cannot stop talking about is Outer Wilds. If anybody's ever tried that, right?
Yeah.
Perfect example of how a creative take on gaming can lead to just an absolute masterpiece, and also have it be completely nonviolent, which is something I appreciate. And I heard you before, Matt, too. Like, I don't get me wrong. Like, I'll play. You'll find me in Population One several nights a week. I believe that gaming for good initiatives and family-friendly games, that they're not replacing violence, right? They're not necessarily replacing Call of Duty. There's just space for both, right? Because especially with VR, we have this wider audience of people that aren't necessarily traditional gamers, a headset sitting in a home, and moms, dads, sisters, brothers, you name it, are all able to enjoy the content, and a lot of them aren't necessarily going to be flocking to Walking Dead and putting swords through zombies' heads. But back to your point, another game that really inspired me, and I had mentioned a few, the Blue, some of those VR experiences. Another great one is the Vader Immortal series, right? I think they sort of defined the genre of story living. They're, maybe 30, 35 minutes long. Some people can push it to, 40 minutes, but ultimately they're so well done, and they throw you into a world, and they just sort of transport you for that 30 or 40 minutes in a way that I believe most games have not, and I should particularly say virtual reality games have not accomplished. So that's another great example that we looked into and then tried to adapt the qualities of it that we liked and use the values in what we were trying to create and combined it.
I love that. I think that what's really fascinating me in entertainment mostly now is the things that are doing something different. And don't get me wrong, I like popcorn flicks. Like, I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but like I've been touting the benefits of Venom Let There Be Carnage, a truly chaotic movie, because it doesn't follow the norms that a lot of superhero movies have been doing now. It's goofy, it's comedic, it's over the top. It doesn't take itself seriously. And I think in the game space also, we have a habit of like wanting everything to be grim, dark, and serious. And I think there's so much more room for things that are light and colorful and beautiful without it having to be this like grim, dark world where you're out for revenge. I think you're right. There's space for both of them, but it's more fun for me as someone who's been playing these things for a while to watch them go in that other direction. I have to assume that you have experience with music. You have saxophones behind you that I assume are not just for show. What kind of music did you grow up listening to? What led you to this kind of mission of wanting to bring the world together through music theory?
It's a great question. And the majority of the core team at Row 2 are Berklee College of Music graduates. Mm-hmm. So a lot of us went in with dramatically different music backgrounds. I'll dive into mine, but what sort of brought us all together was cinematic, was soundtracks, were underscore. Ultimately, a few of us even have, and myself included, a bachelor's in film scoring. So that really sort of was the big combination that brought everyone together, and the umbrella that we were all able to sit under. And you'll notice in Ionia, when you play it, it's just not to toot my own horn, but a cinematic masterpiece when it comes to the audio,
Right.
right? We actually wrote a lot of the music before we ever even knew what VR was. The music has been something that's been evolving over time, and the music actually helped influence the level design. It helped influence the game mechanics we made. It really helped to create the messaging that we ended up instilling into the game. So definitely James Newton Howard, Howard Shore, John Williams, Ennio Morricone, and Alan Silvestri. A lot of the great film score masters are a lot of the influence of our company's background. But if you go back earlier, I come from marching band. I come from
Nice.
rock and roll. I grew up with a record in the home playing Pink Floyd and Crosby, Stills and Nash. And so that's funny enough where I come from. But I ended up, I used to every week or so try and find myself into a movie theater watching films and finding myself not really caring about what I'm seeing, but loving what I'm listening to. And it really inspired me and led me to pursue my major and ultimately pursue what we do at Road2, which is really just a really advanced form of film scoring. We're using software to create emotion. And yeah, so that's a little bit of our music background and mine.
Yeah, it's funny, video game music can go one of two ways, right? It can feel very in the foreground, very much like here's a boss theme, here's a character's theme, this and that. And then other games like The Last of Us, which I mentioned earlier, and even Uncharted, are more cinematic, more scored in the same way. Even later on with actual film scorers working for these games, folks like Henry Jackman and others working with video games to score them. I think that kind of blurred line between media is really fascinating, right? Like ultimately with a video game, I want to be playing a game. I don't want to just watch a video game. There's plenty of room for games that are more narrative focused and that don't involve a lot of mechanics. But I do want to interact in some way. And what I love about Ionia, even just from the trailer, you can see the different ways the player can interact, whether it's hitting these tablets or moving stuff around. I'm guessing it was very important to give that kind of tactile interaction, right? You mentioned before how your early VR experiences were more, look and don't touch, and you thought it was cool, but not what you wanted. I'm guessing you wanted to focus on that interactivity. You wanted it to be more of a playground for your game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the flip side, there's so many VR games out there where I felt overwhelmed by the amount of game mechanics I'm supposed to involve myself in right now. Just mapping every button and mapping the use of multiple buttons on, separate controllers need to do things that are important to the gameplay. I find this to be this iron gate for most casual VR users. There's very few of us who can really get good at using controllers well. When you're in virtual reality, you're more focused on your environment and tactile things that are, excuse me, to be interacted with in a natural way, right? Just simply touching a leaf and having it move a little bit, having something that when you touch it, it sort of wiggles and you realize you can hit it. And when you hit it, it has the physics of something that would really be tied to a base. And we call it, and what I'm referring to is a plant in our game called the punch fruit, which is just, it's really just there to have fun with. You just whack it. And that's a big part of our game, is that most of the things in the game have nothing to do with the main storyline. They're there just to allow people that are inquisitive and interested in exploring to find something unique and interesting to find. So actually, I completely forgot even what we were talking about.
No, it's all right. I mostly was just curious about the importance of having this interactivity, and you've mostly covered it. Like this idea that, like, putting the punch fruit in, as you called it, just a thing to whack. Like that's what I think is really great about VR gameplay. This idea that I love when video games put stuff out of the way that reward you for interacting with them, right? Like if I see a wall that has a crack in it in a video game and I have bombs, that wall better blow up, right? Because if it doesn't, I'll be disappointed every time, because that's like how video games trained us in the early days of Zelda. Like you see a crack in a wall, you want to blow it up, you want to find a secret tunnel, get a reward. And I think that putting something that looks like it could be hit to make a percussive sound, and when you do, it does. Like I feel like that's the kind of reward system you want in video games at the basic level, because it rewards curiosity, which I think the whole goal.
Exactly. Like for every mushroom in the game is a drum head, right? And each one has a different size and a different timbre and a different sound to it. And we're right now going to have an update in the near future that involves achievements on all the platforms, and we're going out of our way to make it so that you actually can have like a platinum achievement because you've hit all 47 mushrooms, and a few of them are very hard to find. And the same with gathering plants, and we're working on having it having all these series of grabbable plants that when you grab it, it'll have just sort of a cute little tone, but it'll be the full range of a piano, from the lowest note to the highest note on an 88 weighted keyboard, right? And so this is just some of the ways we tied things that are so ingrained in us as musicians and such a big part of our life. But then we realize that no one else understands a lot of these. And then when you try to explain it to it, you sound crazy. But when you turn it into a story living VR game, people are able to experience in a way they don't need to know a lick of music and still sort of appreciate. So like just to sort of piggyback on what you were saying about having little things you can do everywhere, right? If something looks like you can interact with it, it should be able to.
Yeah, I agree. Putting things out of the invisible wall in video games is a good gag at this point, but like is frustrating. Like if I can see it, I want to go to it, right? It's one of the most satisfying things about Skyrim, a game that I have complicated feelings about one way or the other because I love it some days and I hate it some days. But if you see something on the map in Skyrim, odds are you can go to it and you can get it, right? It was my favorite thing about Breath of the Wild on the Switch, this idea that you can see this vast horizon. It's not my favorite Zelda game because I like the top-down 2D Zeldas. Like I've always loved those games. But it has my favorite experience in a video game because the idea that no matter how discovered the map is, if you pick a direction and go long enough, you'll find something. Whether it's a Korok seed, which I still didn't get all of because there's a ridiculous amount of them, but like, or a temple or a shrine or whatever, like you'll find something if you go far enough. And I love rewarding that kind of exploration. And I think what you're saying about Ionia and this fact that if you feel around, if you look around, you will find things, I think is a really great way to treat building an environment. I have to imagine, though, also from the game development side, it must be really complicated to have to add that kind of interactivity to build this game from the ground up effectively. Talk a little bit about the kind of work and the kind of time it took to create this world and in this game engine that you're using.
Absolutely. So we're using the Unreal Engine, and we're focused on creating this game originally as a demo that was seen at all sorts of conferences, AWE, CES, GDC, PAX, and we took this demo around and we found the resources we needed to continue making the game. Originally, we were focused on location-based entertainment, and we were doing a soft launch. We had cruise ships lined up, mom and pop VR arcades all over the place, and we were ready to pull that trigger and then bring it to consumer after that release. But unfortunately, like many people, we were affected by COVID, and that plan sort of changed overnight. So then we focused on, hey, let's get this game ready for everyone, and let's see if we can get it on all platforms. Because at the time, the Quest and the Quest 2 were just skyrocketing in popularity, and we realized that, hey, what was originally made for really high quality PC VR needs to be experienced on all platforms. So that's exactly what we started to make. And to dive into the game mechanics, we have some incredible developers, Mike Hogue, Jamie Gibson, and our audio director, Cesar Suarez, did a brilliant job going through and first taking the level design and working with some of the other team members to build out and gray box the entire world, and start to finish is almost the same map, and we just then load in when necessary. But ultimately you're traversing this jungle where you're realizing that things are beautiful, things are great, but then there's elements of the fact that there's been some type of contamination. And in our lore, it's the Locrian army. They're not necessarily bad, but they're industrious and they're utilizing the resources of the Amazon. And it's hurting not just the Ionian people, but it's also hurting the life and the creatures of the land. So we first started by making sure the environment looked like that, right? And so we put a lot of detail into making a really beautiful game that you just constantly you start off by finding an elevator. That elevator takes you down to an area. You have to climb up a tree. You fall through some rocks. You hit your head. You have this lucid dream. Then you find yourself lying where you had collapsed. You then have to solve musical puzzles to get through out of a temple. Then you zip line down this really beautiful scene, and then you're in the sort of the lower part of the jungle, the swampy area, and then you traverse all that until you find caves and ultimately progress the game even further. So you're just constantly trying to make your way toward what you are not sure is there, but you're looking for the harpa, which is the heart, like the one creature that really helps balance everything in the environment and in the ecosystem. So that was really first and foremost our goal in the development, is making sure that those lands and all those places coincide with our messaging, our mission of that vision, and then more importantly, the music too. So a lot of the music, as I mentioned earlier, was written ahead of time. And so we were doing level design based on the mood that music provided, so that, for example, we have the zip line scene, and really the idea of zip lining through the forest came through something our team had to do in the Amazon, but also the music. And we just realized, like, this is the music we would hear and feel when we were doing that literally in the Amazon. And then came in the game mechanics and the progression, right? And then we started to look into how do we make something super simple to interact with. Like, for example, we have castanet plants. They're based on castanets, and they're just chattering at you. And within proximity, they start to follow you. And when you get too close, they sort of snap at you, right? And that's just what they do. That's them. And so a lot of environment like that was created so that when it's not just static meshes everywhere. It's not just simply looking around and seeing a beautiful thing and moving on, but something that, hey, if I actually explore a little further, this is going to do something to interact with me in some way. And then, of course, our main puzzles was something that we put a lot of effort into, making these musical inspired puzzles really just like a realistic instrument. We wanted to make it so that when you play the Sukumba, which is the big marimba I was talking about, that if you hit it lightly, it sounds light, right? If you hit it hard, the velocity changes, making it feel realistic. We also had to make decisions into, hey, do we have it collide so that, at no point, like, can your mallet go through? But then we realized it actually lends to not being able to perform very well. You actually want to have the sensitivity to allow people to feel vibration instead of actually having the two assets just collide with each other and not be able to go through. So we made a bunch of sensitivity decisions with these instruments. Another instrument that we made was called the hang drum, right? So it's this big round drum that you can sort of play on all sides, and making that sound realistic and putting it in a tempo so the resonance of the sound is the way it should be heard is something that we had to take into consideration.
I love this. I love that this is something I don't hear often with game design or even with a lot of artistic endeavors, is that you started with the music in a lot of places. And it's because you've been working on this campaign and doing these things for so long. I love this idea that some of the game was developed to fit the music. That just seems so different from other things, yes. Right? For the most part, I feel like a lot of folks who score games will have the game and have these scenes and then create a mood based on what they see, sort of like movies. And I love that this is the other way around. I also love, it's clear through and through that there's this idea of conservationism and protecting the environment. And it sounds like this is a message that's really close to your heart. That was always the goal from the beginning, if I had to guess, right? Is that you wanted to both create a game that's fun and interactive and music related, but you also want to teach a lesson. You want people to learn. You want to lead people to explore the stuff that's happening in our real life by putting it in this narrative.
Absolutely. I believe that education and entertainment are intertwining and blending, and that education needs to get to a point where it doesn't feel like I'm being taught anything. So the
Right.
goal was to make sure that it didn't ever feel like the messaging was being shoved down your throat,
Right.
and that just by participating with the game, and this is actually something I wanted to bring up earlier, and I'm glad that you mentioned this, is that we're donating 5% of our game. We're the first VR game to have a public partnership with a nonprofit. We're donating 5% to Wildlife Warriors Worldwide. It's the late Steve Irwin's foundation.
Mm-hmm.
His son Rob actually it makes a special guest appearance at the end of the game.
Oh, cool.
When you get done with the game, you'll actually hear a message from him. So this is a partnership we wanted to explore and inevitably put in to the game, because they're not just helping animals in Australia. They are using the funding that goes into Wildlife Warriors Worldwide to take care of rhinos and ultimately protect directly wildlife, endangered wildlife all around the world. And that was really important to us, because if you're playing through our game and you have to feed this giant slug-like creature based on an ocarina, and you have to literally feed it, and you have to use conducting to heal a harpa and ultimately interact or see all these beautiful creatures, we didn't want that to just simply be in name only. We wanted to make sure, just like with all of Rotu's projects, that it has a relevance to the real world. So anybody who buys a copy of Ionia will be donating 5% of that copy to Wildlife Warriors.
I love that. That's incredible. Yeah, you don't hear about that a lot. And I mean, yes, of course, ultimately we live in a capitalist society, right? So we have to make concessions where we can, but I love that you guys are doing that. I think that we've all started paying attention a lot more to the things around us after COVID started, right? Like most intelligent humans are like, oh, maybe I do have to care more about other things and other people in order to not kill those people and things. And so I think that being able to donate just by buying this game is incredible. And of course, what a great foundation to be participating with. I wanted to move on and talk a little bit about your love of gaming outside of this game. Obviously, you play video games. I can see it on your face. Do you have any favorite games that you're playing right now, or games that you're looking forward to that are coming out soon?
As I mentioned, the DLC for Outer Wilds is something I'm really excited about. But right now, funny enough, I'm playing through Shadows Die Twice. I'm just, more or less playing a ninja version of Dark Souls, it feels like, and trying to get through that. That's a nice little thing I do after work every night. I just try and get by one more mini boss, or spend a week trying to figure out how to dodge and block. Also, too, I explore every virtual reality game I can get my hands on. Lone Echo 2 is another favorite of mine. So Lone Echo was an incredible VR game. And I'm really looking forward to the second one, which I have not played. And there's so much, there's so many games, right? It's hard to really pinpoint one. You mentioned Breath of the Wild. I played through that a couple months ago. I had not played it for a while, and then just completed it. Gorgeous game. Love the environments. I actually, unlike you, I grew up on Ocarina of Time. So I played Ocarina of Time ever before I played one of the top downs. So it just felt like just a beautiful modern version of one of my favorite games, with a lot of changes, of course. But I would say too, that in the gaming world, I'm most focused on trying to explore games that really, just like what we're trying to do at Rotu, have a mission and a message to it, to a degree, or again, blending education and entertainment together. That's where I really fall in love and tend to play a lot. I'm trying to even think any upcoming games that are doing that, and none off the top of my head, but that is really what I'm looking for. Oh, what's a great example of a non-traditional game is just like VR chat, right?
Sure.
Where going in and having all these little mini games that a bunch of little development studios or individuals create is this new experience that I absolutely love. Just the fact that I get to go to the moon and travel around with someone that looks like a banana. I find to engage with people in ways I've never engaged before, and to ultimately explore areas that are sort of mesmerizing, even though they might be simple and they might be a little framey, if you will. They still have a level of organic quality to them that I just love.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of, like, there's no right way to play a video game, and that there is no, like, there's no barrier to entry. You know, we like to gatekeep VR games and mobile games and all the, like, they're not real games. And I think that's garbage. I think if you play video games, you're a gamer, you like games, like, there doesn't have to be this archetype for the people who play games. And I think games like Ionia are only furthering that idea that anyone can play games and anyone should play games, you know?
Yes.
Video games have had this bum rap of like that they're wastes of time, or that they're like, you know, for kids. And yes, video games originally were aimed at children. The Nintendo Entertainment System was a kid's toy at the time. They're like, let's get these kids to play games. But the reality is those kids grew up and now their kids are playing games. And I feel old in this moment. But like, I think that furthering that kind of message is really important. I think that games shouldn't just be about this one thing, right? The rise of walking sims and narrative games. Like, I think anyone should be able to play any kind of game that they want, you know, with the mature titles being where they should be until the right age and all of that stuff too. But like, I think what's important about games like Ionia is that you're giving people, people can play, right? At the end of the day, this is play. It's playtime. And I think creating games like that is really key to furthering the artistic vision of this medium.
Absolutely. And you're sort of, as you're speaking, you're unlocking the games in my mind that I love and play that I could not recall earlier. Some of the VR games that I recommend anybody who sort of vibes with this conversation, Eagle Flight, which has been out for several years now, but you're an eagle in a post-apocalyptic Paris, flying around, flying through buildings with broken out windows. You can even catch airstreams and go through the Eiffel Tower to the top. You have to take care of your young. You rest at nests, and ultimately, it's a beautiful, non-violent game that allows you to experience something that's empathy-driven and has a message behind it in a very creative, subtle way. Another great game is Falcon Age, is another incredible game that packs a lot of messaging and storytelling into this little tiny experience where you have empathy for an inanimate virtual creature. And that is something that I also find very appealing to virtual reality gaming, which is we can start to create narratives and we can start to create stories that you could never tell in a 2D game. As well as as a game can be developed, there's something about virtual reality that brings story to life.
Yeah, I mean, for me, VR is always about the experience. You know, there are plenty of action adventure games on VR also, and these games that have heavy mechanics, and they're fun and they're great. But like, for me, as someone who doesn't play a lot of VR and gets easily motion sick, I want a concrete experience that I can kind of get lost in for a couple hours and engage with. You know, I've always, beyond anything else, been astonished with what VR has accomplished in such a short time, right? Like, VR in the early days was like this weird, you know, kind of like gimmick. But I feel like more and more VR now is not a gimmick. It's a platform. It's a way to tell stories. You can see movies and watch concerts in VR where you're in an audience watching an experience, which I think is also really cool. I think as this, you know, continues to grow and change, we'll find some of the leaders in gaming experience come to VR because it's just such a unique thing. I'm curious, before we wrap up, what do you envision is the future of VR, or next steps that you would love to do? Like, what's something that maybe you couldn't have done with Ionia that is either on the horizon or that you wish you could do and you want to find a way to do? Like, there must be things that you've dreamed bigger than what you have right now that you would love to show the world.
Oh, absolutely. I believe Ionia is just a taste of what Road to Entertainment is going to provide in the future. And some of the things that really spark my interest in what I want to develop for in the future is, one, headsets that are a lot lighter, smaller, more like a pair of goggles. And you see a lot of ideas floating around. There's a lot of patents that are made that could lead to the tech to do this. And it's definitely coming. So basically, a pair of ski goggles will be your future VR headset, which, when it has a better mobile processing and it's standalone and capable of seeing higher resolution games, allowing us to create even more visually stunning experiences inside a standalone headset, also removing the controllers and having your hands be ultimately what you use to interact with the world. there's going to be possibilities and potentials that just explode. And it's really going to, I believe, be this new medium of entertainment that is an addition in our homes. So you'll have a TV, you'll have a PS5 or 6 or 7 or wherever it ends up. You'll have your phone. You're going to have all of the other devices that you might utilize to entertain and educate yourself, but you will also have a VR headset, and it will be as much of a tool as it would be a entertainment device. And this is the future of virtual reality, because it is not just for gamers, it's also for everyone. And it can be used also to embody yourself in front of someone where you can even see their mouth moving. And a lot of people don't understand this, is that you can see a loved one on the other side of the world embodied in front of you, talking to you. You can reach out and touch them. And when you touch them, your controller vibrates. Like, you have some level of haptic feedback from someone that is on the other side of the world. Right now, it's in the baby stages. It's definitely a little gimmicky for most people. Most people are not going to want to utilize that over just a traditional phone call or video or Skype or Zoom. But it most certainly will be something that will be engaging in the next 5 years, next 10 years. And I believe entertainment and education and commercial uses will drive VR to a place where it's so intuitive and so easy, and the hardware is just so good that interaction will be as easy as just throwing on a pair of goggles.
Yeah, I mean, think about how expensive the first iPod was, or the first MP3 player was, right? Mini disc players. Like, technology only gets cheaper as it shifts and gets better. Sometimes it does get more expensive, but it gets more compact as well. And I think you're absolutely right. Also, like, I envision this world where we'll eventually have the holodecks of Star Trek at some point.
Yes.
Like VR.
I'm actually going through Next Generation right now.
Oh, nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
I love Star Trek. And I love all sci-fi, but what I love about Star Trek is this constant vision of wanting to do and be better, right? The new series, the old series, it doesn't matter. Star Trek is about being the best you can be and putting that out into the world. And I think that, I do worry, though, if we ever have actual holodecks, that no one will ever leave their house again, that's my major concern. But yeah, like, I think that, you're absolutely right. The tech is headed in that direction. And, like, think about when we were kids, the idea of talking into a rectangle and seeing your mom, your dad, your partner's face in it. Like, it was science fiction when we were kids. And now we have tiny boxes where we can talk to anyone in the world. We can access information from anywhere. Like, the idea of a data pad in Star Trek is now reality. So imagine what we can do in another 30 years.
Absolutely. And Matt, I would love to quickly, I know we're running out of time, but I'd love to quickly explore that point you made where, is it so bad if people were to spend time on the holodeck, right? I'm personally, to set that up, is like, I feel that one of the biggest issues is the fact that we're traveling outside of our homes so much, and that we are creating such an environment that it's unsustainable for the planet. And I feel like travel, and COVID sort of showed us this, could just be purposeful, right? Yeah. You travel only when you want to go see a loved one, or you really want to go to a concert, right? You're not traveling every day to work, or you're not always, just going somewhere to be somewhere. And I feel like VR could help alleviate that, maybe not right now, but in the far future, when it's, the hardware is ready for it. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I agree. I think that I was always kind of a homebody, but COVID was hard, right? We miss our family, we miss our friends. I've lost loved ones because of it and because of the carelessness. And I feel like if we had a tool where we could travel, or, don't even get me started on beaming up and beaming technology. Like, if we had that kind of stuff, it would be so much easier. I think the unfortunate truth of this world that we found out during COVID is there are a lot of selfish people out there who just want to do for themselves. And I think for me, it reframed the importance of getting to see my parents. When my spouse and I go somewhere, my spouse is high risk, like, making it purposeful, right? Bosses telling us for years, you have to come to the office. You have to be here to work so I can see you work and do your job. And we know that's blatantly not true anymore. The world didn't stop functioning when COVID happened and we were all in lockdown. Jobs still went on. Companies, some companies failed and some places struggled, but other places thrived because they realized, Like, think about the accessibility. I think about accessibility all the time. I have a friend who is in a wheelchair and can't get around easily and has struggled to go into work every day and get it on and off the subway, can now just work from home and has no reason to ever go back to the office, and has proven that he can do his job wherever he is. And I love those kinds of discoveries. So I completely agree. Jason, thank you for taking this time to chat with me. This is incredible. I cannot wait to see when Rotu conquers the world. But until that time, why don't you tell folks where they can find you on the internet, where they can find Rotu and Ionia, the best place to get the game? Like, do your plugs, tell folks where they can find you and your stuff on the internet.
Perfect. Well, if anybody wants to personally reach out to me, it's at Jason Parks VR on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as LinkedIn. And if you want to learn more about Ionia, Rotu Entertainment, and reach out to us and our company, you can go to www.rotu.com or find us anywhere on social media at RotuVR.
Awesome. I have one final question for you, Jason, and it's a question I've been asking a lot of my guests since COVID started and since the pandemic continues, because it's not over. People need to get vaccinated and wear a damn mask. But what is one good thing that came out of this time in isolation and the time during the pandemic? Because it's a lot of negativity, right? It's hard. A lot of unfortunate things have happened over the last year. But was there something good that came of this time, something good that happened in the last year and a half to 2 years that jumps to the front of your mind?
Yes, and it's on a world scale. We were able to give, to some degree, a breather to many regions of this planet. And it is very important that we start to, as a society, understand that global action has to be taken, because we only have a certain amount of large mammals left. And one of the reasons I made Ionia, right, and why our team is doing what we do, is because since the 70s, we've lost an unbelievable amount of biomass on this planet, right? Large creatures are dying off. Our great-grandchildren might think of rhinoceroses as we do dinosaurs. And that is something I am not eager to just sit by and allow happen, right? And like you said, we can't make, let me say it like this. I believe education is going to be driving that. So this whole remote learning, the ability to not allow so much busyness around the planet and allow people to go to, forcing people to go to places because they just got to be somewhere, there's many, for example, a lot of the reefs we're seeing because of the less amount of boating and the amount of commercial use in some areas of coastlines, you're having an abundance of coral growth back, and the plants and the creatures in those coral growths that need to exist to make it thrive. We've seen what is it? I believe, and of course, go find the statistics online because I can't think of the exact numbers, but in terms of smog, in terms of output of debilitating chemicals in rivers, streams, and ultimately getting into plant life in our food has decreased. And I think that COVID has had a overwhelming negative effect on so many people. As you had mentioned, loved ones and family, same with me. That can't be dismissed and that can't be just simply forgotten about. But I love the question you're asking, because there is always good in the bad. And I think it's time for us to maybe take a lesson and learn from us not flying around as much, us not driving around as much, us not boating, and ultimately staying in place and realizing, like, wow, the earth can come back quickly. And if we allow it to, that we can help future generations have the same world that we have now.
I love that. So well said. Jason, thank you for joining me. The last thing I'll ask you to do is, we have a saying on the show. The saying is, music is life and life is good. It's this idea. It was born out of my now on indefinite hiatus music review show. It's this idea that as long as we're creating, as long as we're making stuff, no matter how bad life gets, you can find joy in the creation, in creating. So if you could just say music is life and life is good, we'll end the show.
Music is life and life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.nat.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Hey.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
CPOV.
certainpov.com.